Cameron.
Thank you, Cameron. Our seventh tradition states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We will now pass the white basket. This is a weekly step meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the step of the week, followed by discussion and questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, to subscribe, and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting on this 10th day of February 2025 at the Monday 6 p.m. Say Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker, coming all the way from Chalfont, Pennsylvania, is Nick, and he will be sharing the experience on Step 4. Please help me welcome Nick.
Thank you. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm gratefully clean and sober. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your service. Here's my 4-step right here, so you guys can just read this, and thanks for letting me share. Have a good night. I still have this tucked in my book because it's important for me to remember some of the stuff that, like, when I first came in, but when I first did a true 4-step, what had so much depth and weight in my life and was really what I was angry about, upset about, and had resentments towards. So I hand this to guys that I work with sometimes and check it out, and they can look at it and kind of use it as a reference guide. And it's something that I've heard people say they burn their 4-step, and I hung on to mine. That's their own personal choice, but I wanted to read a few readings, but I just wanted to start by saying I was first introduced to rehab, AA, recovery in 2009. For 7 years, it got worse. It progressively got worse and worse, wearing me thin. The pain and suffering became more and more great. They say you come to AA and we'll wreck your drinking, and I truly did, because I knew there was another way to live, and I saw it was available, but I was not willing to do any of that stuff. And I suffered, in the misery, the darkness. My world became very small and very dark. And I remember one of the counselors saying, "We're seeing you more and more frequently in these rehabs." In this rehab, I was in Penn Foundation 5 times, and the one counselor said, your world, it's becoming smaller and smaller windows, and it was accelerated. My disease was just, my addiction, my alcoholism was just accelerated. So like I said, for 7 years, it doesn't have to be your story. You can, if you come here and you stay here and do what's asked of you, you don't have to suffer the way I did. So you really can't talk about Step 4 without kind of, just saying a little bit of my background, a little lead-in of how I got here. And great upbringing, no trauma, no childhood, anything that could, say, they say that doesn't make you an alcoholic to have anything like that. There was alcohol present in my family, just everywhere, all the time. And I just was, I looked forward to it. The first time I sipped on a beer, I liked it. I liked the smell. I liked the aroma. I liked the allure. I liked what I saw it doing to my family, the camaraderie, the party, the jovialness, the fun of it. All the good stuff. If that's a thing. For a long time, I didn't see any of the. Well, I did see it, but I didn't really think that would be me at any point. I watched my uncle die from this disease. Dead and bloated at 63, jaundice, yellow, hep C, successful businessman who, gave it all away, his family, beautiful house in Connecticut, boat, material stuff's not that important, but he had the life, when he chose, he went this other route, and, divorced, just lost everything, and even on his deathbed, he said, "I'm not like those AA guys, I'll never go there." He was just resistant and arrogant, and I can relate to that now looking back. How resistant and arrogant I was in my first rehab, and naive to what I really suffered from, what I was truly up against. I thought if I could just, they say put the plug in the jug, stop drinking and drugging hard, and just kind of slow it down and moderate again, which I never did to begin with. That's a delusion. My mind tells me these things, that I'd be okay. And that was not the case. I never drank moderately, even from the beginning. It was hard and fast all the time, excessive, how much quantity, didn't care about quality, it was how much you could put down. And it was a badge of honor that I wore as a young kid, a teenager, that once I learned that I had a good tolerance to this stuff, like, I don't know where that came from, I could drink with the football players, with the hockey players, with, you name it, like the stoners. I fit in with everybody with alcohol, and that was something I think I was missing for a long time. To really find my clique, but I found it to be this, like they say, a chameleon. I could really go with any group of people because we had that one kind of commonality, which was alcohol, and I gravitated towards that whole lifestyle, just the party. I was very immature. I cared nothing. I lived one day at a time, in a negative way for a very long time because I did not care about tomorrow. Did not care about the future. All I cared about was right now, when I'm getting it in, who's getting it, how much, how fast, and that was it. My life was a party. That's all I cared about. And my dad was a military guy. He was so upset, just saying, how don't you think about the future? Don't you care about anything like that? And I really didn't. I didn't care. All I wanted to do was play and party. So that was basically my teens, and then all through my 20s and 30s, just moments of like maybe some clarity where I knew it was getting out of control, but I just was not willing to even think about stopping. We say it a lot here, like I can stop anytime I want to, but I really just don't want to. And that's the thing that this disease tells us. We have some kind of control, the strong will to like be able to stop this thing. So. Again, I had no idea what I was up against in my first rehab. I was in Living Grin in 2009, and I'm banged up, 20 years of drinking and drugging. I'm sitting there with my dad, and he looks at me, and I'm in there, and I'm like trying to plead with him to like get me out of there, because I'm a manipulator, and hopefully he's feeling sorry for me. And he just looked at me and said, "You did this to yourself." And I still don't forget that first rehab. A lot of stuff I had learned in there, and like understanding what alcoholism and what drug addiction was truly all about. Had no idea the power of it, the magnitude, what I was truly up against. And at that point, I was really unwilling to do anything. I just was like wanting to get separated, like I said, cool it down, calm down a little bit. So when I got out of that rehab, I did get a sponsor, but I was not willing to stop some other things. So I wasn't honest with that in the beginning. But I met with this guy at a meeting down in Philadelphia in the Bristol area, and we sat in his car, and he had this book, and which kind of turned me off because I was raised Catholic and I wasn't into the Bible, wasn't into books. I'm not a book person, or I wasn't a book person. And I chose a guy because he had a lot of tattoos. He was in a band, and at the time I was like really into skateboarding and snowboarding, so he kind of fit that persona that I gravitated towards. But I'm like, well, this guy's sober, he's doing something, so maybe I don't know. He seemed cool. His name was Sean, and he knew he had a small window of opportunity maybe help me. So we got into the book a little bit. He asked me about my relationship with God, and I didn't really know what God was. I thought I did by being Catholic, and I really had no idea what the strength of like spirituality compared to just like religion, for me anyway. And so we sat there, we just read a few things, and I think I just nodded them, yes, whatever. And at the end, he handed me these worksheets, which was inventory, and I looked at it and said, there's no way I'm doing any of this stuff. Like, I hated homework my whole life. I hated school. I hated homework. There's no way I was doing anything extracurricular for this, because I had no idea, I just was unwilling. So that got filed into my rehab drawer and never really looked at again. And that was basically the end of our relationship. He checked on me a few times, and I was like, I ghosted him. And the unwillingness to do that 4-step. So the pain and misery continued until it became great enough to where I'd been in and out of the rooms for so long, around AA, like in and out, multiple rehabs, 7 rehabs, a bunch of detoxes, a little bit of jail. And finally, I got to that point of complete surrender, and the book talks about complete deflation, step 1, another way to look at step 1. And, I knew there was another way to live. I tried recovery houses and I a little bit of a recovery, like just basically fellowship, and hung on to, I think I had 90 days at one point. And it wasn't long before that when I disconnected from what little bit of connection I had, and guys were calling me, reaching out, and I understand now why sometimes people don't answer their phones, because I did the same thing to people. People were reaching out and asking me, "Yo, you okay? We haven't seen you in a while." And I went back out, and it was a short run, about 4 months, but I got even more broken, more pain and suffering, more hurting the ones I love the most, my family, friends and loved ones. Everybody had written me off. So I did something different I'd never done before. I picked up the phone and got myself a bed. It was always somebody finding me, begging me to get a bed somewhere, setting this up for me, because I was irresponsible. And and for once I did something for my recovery and picked the phone up and got a bed at Penn Foundation again. And thankfully they took me back, and then I went back to this recovery house and kind of did what I was asked to do. And I remember, a few months in, I had asked Ron to be my sponsor, and he was encouraging me to write this 4-step. And it's something you hear about in rehabs all the time, the reluctancy of doing this 4-step. And I went back out, and I think it really, once I made this pledge and promise in step 3, this decision that I'm going to, not only invite God into my life, higher power, whatever you call it, but to go further with the steps, to decide to really do this thing. So, like I said, I never was a literature, or I'm sorry, just a book person. I wasn't a big reader, but I am now. I utilize the literature I love because it's me. This book describes me, and a guy handed me this book a long time ago, and he said, this is the owner's manual for the real alcoholic. So again, without steps 1, 2, and 3, we couldn't be here at step 4. Take this inventory, right? So I feel like there's no coincidences in AA. I added in another book to my morning meditation, As Bill Sees It, and I read this today, and coincidentally, or no coincidence, this reading here just seems like it hit home. So, telling the worst. This is from page 311 of As Bill Sees It. Though the variations were many, my main theme was always how god-awful I am. Just as I often exaggerated my modest attainments by pride, so I exaggerated my defects through guilt. I would race about confessing all and a great deal more to whoever would listen. Believe it or not, I took this widespread exposure of my sins to be great humility on my part, and considered it a great spiritual asset and consolation. But later on I realized at depth that the great harms I had done others were not truly regretted. These episodes were merely the basis for storytelling and exhibitionism. When this realization came, the beginning of certain amount of humility. So to humble myself and really sit down and look at myself and take this personal stock and inventory was something I'd never done before, because I just didn't want to. I'm a stubborn alcoholic, and I just, I don't like extra credit. I never liked homework, like I said, and I was like, okay. So I took the time in the recovery house to sit down and write a 4-step. I mean, it wasn't the most long. It wasn't a novel. So to keep it simple, follow the brackets in the book, keep it as simple as possible, follow the outline in the big book. And that's all I did. I went for the heaviest ones, family, the ones that held the most depth and weight, like I said, in my life, and put those on paper first. And the beauty of this program is if I continue on step 10 every day and 11 inventory, looking at myself, I'll never have to do this list again. I can do this daily and not have to add to this list or potentially go back and make amends to these people again or anybody else if I continue to work this program to the best of my ability. So, like I said, the pain and suffering was great enough, and I was willing to do this thing. And I always go back to the book. It's just, I need the guidance, I need the help. And so page 64 and how it works. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. And I have some notes here I'd written when I sat down with Ron and did this thing. The importance of when we do this 4-step to do the 5th step. He said, you're walking around with a loaded gun. When we get all this inventory down on paper, it's important to get this stuff out to the universe and to somebody we trust in to talk about this stuff. So very important once we do this 4-step to continue with the 5th step. And throughout this whole thing, he reminded me to look at these things, these actions, these things I've done. And look at myself and find the common denominator, which was me. What was my part in this stuff? In every action, I was involved in these things that I thought were resentments or guilt or anger that I had towards somebody, the unjustified resentments I had against these people. So here it says that we started on a personal inventory, and that was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory goes broke. Taking commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. One object is to disclose damage or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. It's the owner of the business is to be successful. He cannot fool himself about his values. And we're going to be looking at our fears and our selfishness, and we do this as honest as we can. That's why the importance of step 3, to really have this God reliance, when we sit down and be wholehearted and honest with everything from my heart to put on paper and not exclude anything to the best of our ability. And that was hard for me. I was not vulnerable, and I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to let anybody see my true self. So that was a good beginning for me to really tear down those walls and you know, that the thing that kept me out there for the longest time, the willingness to like say, you know what, I'm no longer going to be afraid to like tell somebody what's really going on. And they're just saying, if you don't tell us where it hurts, how can we help you? I love that saying. Like, if someone comes to me and says, if you don't like, either just say I'm okay. I'm like, if you don't tell me what's going on, how can we help you? You know. So, again, it's scary stuff when you're new and you're like, why do I got to do this, right? Why do I got to tell anybody anything? I was trying to bury this stuff for the longest time. Forget about all this stuff. Like, what's done is done. Like, you know, the wreckage of my past and the tornado they talk about, the cycle, just ripping through the lives of others. The selfishness of my existence, it needed to be addressed. I needed to look at the people I hurt and make this, you know, really solid effort to go out and try to make the wrongs right as best as I could. And it talks about resentment being the number one offender. You know, if I have resentments, you know, it's something I need to pray upon today. I can't control the world. You know, I say the serenity prayer, and I put a little twist on the way I said the serenity prayer. God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change in other people, the courage to change the things I can in only myself, and the wisdom knows the difference that I am not you, God. And something as simple as that, just to ask God, please, you know, please direct my thinking today. Help me to not live the way I used to, you know, to have this selfish like mindset, and it's an easier way to live if I can try to apply that on a daily basis. It really helps. Going forward a little bit more, it talks about where had I been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Though a situation not been entirely our fault, we tried to discard the person involved entirely. Where were they to blame? Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other person's. We saw our flaws and listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. So that right there, if the willingness just to even do this, to go forward, to the best of my ability, you know, this is it's painful. It can be painful. It can be difficult, but it's so worthwhile to clean up this wreckage, to air out the dirty laundry, to like Ron says, the ghost of Christmas past. I can't sit on these things, because they're going to keep me sick. They are going to keep me ill internally. You know, I did the abstinent thing, just being separated, and then being an untreated alcoholic. And it started with just behavior on my previous attempt at sobriety, the last one before I truly got and stayed sober. Lying about going to meetings, dishonesty at work, stealing little things. Just basically just being deceitful and where I was doing what I was, you know, I'm still going to the strip club and drinking Red Bull and smoking cigarettes and thinking that's okay. My lifestyle, I couldn't let go of that lifestyle. But telling my parents I'm going, you know, I'm living with my sister, I'm going to a meeting, but I'm going to the strip club, and like trying to still just being very dishonest in my lifestyle and lying to my bosses and being resentful for my boss because I'm not getting paid enough. Why are they not giving me the hours I deserve? You know, the poor me, and it wasn't even before. This wasn't even, you know, I hadn't even picked up a drink or a drug yet. So I look at my behaviors. You know, they say, how are you living? You know, am I practicing these principles in all my affairs? Am I truly living through you know, in a good way? And it's not just about good living. You know, I've heard my friend Andrew talk about that. Yeah, you can act a big game, but you know, am I truly really living this thing to the best of my ability? So, I remember when I sat down and did this thing for the first time. There was uncomfortability at first, but we started to laugh. And you know, I shared with Ron. He came to the recovery house, took time out of his day, which I thought was very, you know, considerate. You know, and came there. I wasn't driving at the time, so he came and met me. But he saw I was willing, so he always says, "I'll meet you halfway." And you know, he knew I didn't have a license, so he did that for me. And we sat and we laughed and we shared an experience together. And it's something when I can sit down with a guy and do this thing, and it's nervous for them. But when we start to break down those barriers and ease the tension a little bit by sharing my own story with them, it softens the blow and it makes it, like, you know, a little more tolerable for them. And that's what it's all about, because the nerves, the anxiety, you know, that keeps us away from this thing. And it was an eye-opening experience, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned stuff about him as well. That like I'm not that special and unique, and he's other stuff. I've been through this stuff and done the same stuff we've done, and maybe even worse. But we had fun and laughed, and I'm not even sure how long it took. Time just kind of just seemed to slip away, and we did what we could, and we took down some notes and stuff like that. And it's kind of hard not to talk about the fifth step, but I mean after that, I did feel lighter. It wasn't like boom, I'm like wow, like there was something was changing internally, but I had already laid down some foundation and groundwork beforehand. I got into service, I was praying and meditating, doing like the stuff already, so there was already kind of an internal shift happening. But just like when I finished doing this thing, he left and I took my time and I felt like I was actually really doing AA. I'd never done this before. This was like a new uncharted territory that I'd never done before. So like it's the furthest I've ever gone through the steps. I'm like, and I never really did that before at all. So that was new to me, and I felt there was something happening, like something was going on here. These guys were right. But it took what it took for me to get to that point of just saying, okay, I'll give this a shot. And like I said, something started to change internally. Like something was definitely happening, a shift. The psychic change was occurring, and it gave me more tools, more help. On my psyche, my internal emotional sobriety, if you will. And there were challenges along the way. I'm not going to say there weren't. I mean, death in the family. I mean, you name it. Some hardships. Stuff with health with my sister, psych wards, niece and nephew with you name it. And this is not again for me to make you guys feel sorry for me, but just to know that if I don't continue to do this and stay on top of this thing, which has become habitual, and I don't want to say it's just a way of life now for me, to be able to walk through and navigate through life when no matter what comes at me, the thought of a drink or a drug is no longer an option. And that for a guy like me who always went back to that, no matter if something good or bad happened, that's a miracle. I mean, I can't even believe that has left me. The book talks about it being removed. I no longer have to fight a drink or a drug. And in the beginning, I thought that's what AA was. I thought you come here, you fight another day, you make a meeting, you hang onto your chair, white knuckle it, don't drink no matter what, kid, keep coming back. The old timers had the slogans, which do have some value, but I thought that was AA. I didn't understand. The book was never presented to me, and I was not willing to look at it or even read it because I was anti-book, like I talked about. And I just thought that's what recovery was: just grin and bear it, hang on till midnight, fight another good fight tomorrow. And I have a lot of good friends that have been sober a while who do that, and they're hanging on. God bless them. It's hard to reach people. I know how it was hard for people to reach me, so I have to understand. Not everybody's is if they're content with where they're at with their sobriety, that's their journey. I can only present what's been given to me and offer to them if they're interested. And sometimes they say the attraction thing. Sometimes they'll see just have a lighter, easier does it kind of mentality, and it might be attractive to them. And ask, what's going on? What kind of program do you work? And I'll explain to them. I'll share with anybody afterwards what my routine is. It hasn't changed much, and they tell you if you stick to basics, you never have to go back to basics. So I really haven't changed. I've only added more. I haven't subtracted. I don't make meetings every day like I used to. I do quite a bit a week. I do try to do a lot of service, and again, not as much as I had done in the beginning. I was really gung-ho in the beginning, and I dated a girl in early recovery, and she's like, "Man, you do AA alcoholically." I'm like, "Yeah, my life depends on it. I got to do this. Like, I never did. I'm gonna die. You understand?" And God bless her. She went back to, hey, that's her journey, right? But she didn't understand how severe my alcoholism was, that I needed to give 110% to this thing, because I had a healthy fear of dying. I didn't want to die, although I thought about it many times, and it's been fun. So that last rehab I got into was April 18th. My sober date's April 19th, 2016, and that is a blessing. It's going by really quick. I really, other times it was like TikTok. I'm just hanging on, and it's been flying by. I stay busy in AA, I stay busy with God, I stay busy with family, with my friends, connection, fellowship, and you name it. Try to work the AA 3 legacies to the best of my ability: unity, service, and recovery. I don't do this thing perfectly by any means, but I don't want to test the water to stop doing. My buddy Rich, who he was a huge part of my recovery, early recovery, and passed away many years ago from cancer. But he would say, if something's working so well, why would you stop doing it? You know, and it's just something like, hang on to this thing, man. I don't want to see or test the water if I stop or drift too far. I've watched guys who know this book inside out, know the dangers of stop doing this, and one have either died or they can't find their way back and they struggle and they're just lost, you know, and it's painful to watch. I'm talking multiple years, 20 years, and they go out because they forget what they're truly up against. They think they have a choice and the will to choose. My buddy picked up and said, I'll start my sober day tomorrow, and in and out for 6 years now, and it's been painful to watch. And after 20 years of sobriety, just what, you know, you can't thinking we can control this thing or have that power. And which is, I think, is a healthy fear for me to watch. And sometimes you learn, and Ron always says, sometimes we are the message, or sometimes we carry the message, or sometimes we are the message, or sometimes I forget. Anyway, I could ramble on and on about AA. I think I'm pretty much there. I'm actually over. If I helped anybody today, that's my service to you guys. I just love AA. Again, it's God's grace that I've been sober since that date. I really have not slowed down too much. My buddy Tim and I say, let's just not take our foot off the gas because we don't want to see. It means so much to me, my sobriety, you know, and not only that, but my family as well. I mean, it's so important to them to see, to have their son back, their brother, their uncle, you know, back in their lives, and be present and available and helpful and reliable. Those things which I was not. So, thank you very much.
Good job, Nick. Comes to a very important time, and would love to hear y'all maybe do a little sharing. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking, or if you have had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We're in a church property and on a spiritual journey. So I'm opening up the floor. So, Kara.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Kara.
Hello, everybody.
Man.
So good to be here.